Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. Tell me how the audio is because I have a new setup here. So hopefully you can hear me. I hope everyone is very well. Let's see who we have on the stream tonight. We have CGM. Great to see you, CGM. Hope you're well. We also have Mad Monk. Great to see you, Mad Monk. We have Stefan is here. The Lefty Boater is on. Great to see you once again. Killer is moderating. Thanks for moderating, Killer and CGM tonight. We also have Alistair Kerr. Great to see you. Rod is here, Dan is here, great to see you both. Hugh is here. Colin, great to have you on. We have Frederick, we have Billy, we have David McGuinness. Make sure to check out Indie Truck Davies, the Two Davies YouTube channel. We also have Regan Elite, great to see you, Regan Elite, hope you're well. Woods by Me is here. We have Dan, great to see you. We have Viking Stew of Stewland. Thank you so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Hey Max, great content you've been putting out lately. Thank you very much for that. Very kind of you and your super chat. Thanks for that support. As I said saying before, I'm been moving around a little bit. I'm back in the old apartment, old flat, because the buffering issues were creating massive problems before. So hopefully we won't have any buffering issues tonight. At least I hope the audio isn't too bad. I'm using a different setup tonight. Thanks so much, Stu. Hope you're well. We also have, who else have we got on the stream? We have Number Free. Great to see you once again. Hope you're well, Number Free. We have Roisin. Great to see you, Roisin. Maria has Sock Juice. Great to see you on. Still don't know the meaning behind sock juice. Don't know if there's what sort of joke there is there. We have who else have we got? We have Doc Davies, great to see you. And so many more. Audio isn't great, Max. Okay, let me see if I can do something about that. I don't know if I can do anything. Let me try something else. Don't know if this is actually helping at all. Audio is a bit low, Max. Okay. I'll put the microphone in my mouth. I don't know what else to do. Audio not good. I have it at max, so I'm not sure what else I can do, but sounds like you're in a box. So it's the quality, not the volume. Okay, it's a bit low and I sound like I'm in a box. But not off-putting. Okay, thanks, John. Well, let's try. It's not, if it's not buffering, it's going to be audio. If it's not audio, it's going to be buffering. So let's try our best throughout this. I'll speak louder and hopefully there won't be too many problems. Okay, so the first story we have tonight here about Brexit. So of course we're going to start off with Brexit. Brexit has chilled business investment, says Bank of England Deputy Governor. So David Ramsden tells MPs referendum fallout also contributed to lower speed limit for growth of UK economy. The outcome of the Brexit vote and years of political uncertainty has had a chilling impact on business investment in Britain, a Deputy Governor of the Bank of England has said. David Ramsden, the bank's Deputy Governor for Markets and Banking, said the fallout from the 2016 referendum had chilled investment levels compared to the other leading nations and contributed to a lower speed limit for the UK economy. This is something I've been mentioning as well, that the economy will continue to grow, but there is a speed limit. I've used the analogy of driving around with your handbrake on. You'll still move forward, but something is pulling you back, and it's going to be a constant drag until you release that handbrake, and we all know the way to release the handbrake. It's hard to conclude otherwise that the decision to leave the EU, that many may have lots of good reasons for, but it has a chilling business. It has been but that it has chilled business investment, he said. Yes, of course, you know, who is going to invest in an economy where they can't access the workers they need, or it's more difficult to access the workers they need, where if you're importing, it's going to be problematic. If you're exporting, it's going to be problematic. So there's always going to be an issue. And while in Europe, if you're struggling to export within your country, you can export within the single market. So there is room for expansion. But for the UK economy at the moment, sounds like you're in the back of a van on the Longford bypass. Okay. I really don't know what the cause of all of this is. The back of a van. I like that analogy. Max is on the run, chat. God, if it's not one thing, it's another. So I need to. Viking Stew, President Stew of Stewland, thank you so much for that support. Very kind of you. He sounds like if he's speaking into a vase. Damn it, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Where's Longford? better than buffering. Oh my God, I apologize for all of this. If it's not one thing, it's another. Anyway, let's move on. I wanted to touch on that Brexit story. Of course, it's going to be a case of driving around with the handbrake on. But I want to touch on this other story here. So Max is trapped somewhere, guys. I don't know how long before we can get me. Don't mention buffering. No, don't mention the buffering. I mentioned it once or twice, and I think I got away with it. So, one of the policies that the Tories want to impose at the moment is a crackdown on benefits, but not so much on this idea that people are gaming the system, but they want to force people who are currently on benefits because of ill health, mental health issues, disability, to force them into doing jobs, for example, working from home. And James O'Brien took a very interesting call from a lady who's disabled at the moment, or who is sick, who's not working, and she explains the problems that she would face if she was forced into employment.
They want to dehumanise them and demonise them. That's quite simple. They've always been doing it. Whichever vulnerable group they want to pick on for each week, it's always sick and disabled, then it's the immigrants, then it's whoever, the OAPs or whoever else. The poor in general, whichever branch you want to pick on. They always do it every week without fail. And to be perfectly honest, I know what it's like to go through the hoops. I'll be the first to admit, I have got a neurological condition caused by Lyme disease. It also affects my heart, and it affects my joints and muscles. And if I'm in front of a computer, if he thinks he says, "Oh yes, well they can go do work from home."
Yeah.
If you've got what I've got, which is chronic Lyme disease, and you have seizures when you look at a screen for more than half an hour, especially a computer screen.
Yes.
You can't even afford a computer, James.
Well, that's a point I hadn't thought of.
People
actually.
can't afford it.
So you need the
all
hardware.
your money on blaming, yeah.
And you need what, 20 quid a month or thereabouts at least for.
Yeah, and are people going to be given the option? Are they going to be given the support? You must adjust your mic level gain as the clip sound is fine. So the problem is my microphone. But it's a case of, you're relying on people. People need to have access to the equipment necessary if they are to work online, if they are to work from home. But the government aren't going to actually give them that support. They're not going to buy the equipment for them. And of course the internet connection, because that's a cost as well.
For a broadband deal, for a functioning broadband deal. And then you need somehow a commitment to an employer that you'll be able to do X number of. For most employers are going to need some sort of commitment, and many, many conditions will make that impossible. So the evidence that this isn't a real problem or a very big problem is mounting, but it's not non-existent. There must be some people on incapacity. And it's framed wrong as well. If it was being framed as we're going to help you find something that you can do, because we know how awful it must be, how soul-destroying it must be to be stuck in the house all day or not feel like you're not making good use of your time and your day. We're going to help you find something that you can do. We're going to find employers who will meet you halfway and you will be of benefit to each other. But it doesn't sound like that. The minute they start, they're threatening to take your benefits away.
All I've ever wanted to do is to work, is to have a career and just do the best I could, but I've been completely hampered.
No, of course you have. And this is the weird thing about Sunak's rhetoric. He's talking about you, as if you've made a choice to be in the situation that you're in, talking about that we believe in the inherent dignity of a good job. We believe that work, not welfare, is the best route out of poverty. It is all designed to portray you as choosing to be living in the circumstances that you're living in, which could...
And that's it. It's about convincing the public that she's choosing to be in that situation. Once again, Viking Stew, President Stu Stulan, thanks so much for that super chat. You had the DWP want to access claimants' bank accounts every month to see what they're buying. It is sick. This shunt needs to do one. Yes. That was another story that was brought up last week, and well said, well pointed out there, Stu. This idea that the DWP want to access people's bank accounts and look at what they're spending their money on. Like, people are already struggling, and you want to make their lives even more miserable. Oh, look, you bought a packet of crisps. Oh, you bought a can of beer. Oh, you did this or you did that. Well, this is these are grounds for us to sanction you in some way, or maybe you're not spending your money correctly, or you should be, you put in claims for, I don't know, some sort of expenses or whatever. Well, you're not, you shouldn't be making those claims. We're going to sanction you. So it's all about ways to cut people off, to force people off benefits and into employment if possible. Thanks so much, Stu. And I know there's so many people who are on the chat tonight who are in this situation, and this is why it's so worrying, because with a stroke of a pen, so many lives can be destroyed. And instead of actually focus, this whole thing of, well, we need to clamp down because it's fraud, or it's about money that's, taxpayer money that's being wasted. Well, why don't they go after people who actually have money? The multimillionaires, the billionaires, the rich. Go after them. They are the ones who are avoiding paying their taxes, the ones who are evading their taxes. Go after those people. You'd actually collect more money, and you'd actually be able to fund public services instead of going after people who have nothing in many cases.
Which could not be further from the truth.
No, absolutely not.
It's extraordinary.
I do think it's partly because we're easy targets.
Clearly.
I don't know if we don't have all the money. When as you said before, the vast majority of people are claiming it absolutely legitimately, and it is a very small amount. I mean,
he's not even really talking about the people who. I mean, that's a separate issue. He talks about clamping down on fraudsters, but the conversation about the dignity of a good job is not designed. It's not aimed at the fraudsters. It's aimed at you. It's aimed at what could day to day? Could you do? I appreciate it's a bit. It's not exactly what you were dreaming of when you signed up to do a PhD.
I want to say thanks to Andrew for sharing that. Example, seizures can last 3 minutes but can take 3 days to recover from. So this whole idea, well, can you do the work? Can you sit at the computer for 8 hours a day or whatever it is? Once again, and this is the worst thing about the DWP, is you have people who have no experience, no understanding of the conditions that people are going through. They are the ones put in charge of employment. They're the ones who are deciding whether you get your benefits or you're sanctioned. How many stories have we heard about people who have had sick notes rejected? Doctors saying these people are not fit to work, and the DWP overrules. Thanks once again, Viking Stew. Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you. Thanks for your support. I'm one of the claimants working on universal credit. So many people. And thanks for sharing that. I think there's so many people who are on universal credit who are struggling to make ends meet. Is Max in a tin can? Apologies for the audio. I'm not sure what's going on tonight. Let me see if I can switch the audio to a different device and maybe it will improve, or maybe it will not improve. Okay. Okay, back to the old audio. Mac's sound's gone. I'm trying my best to do it to work around this problem. Thumping sound. Sounds like we finished the vinyl. That's worse, Max. Okay. Can you hear me now? Is that any better? I'm back to normal again. But the point made about everything, no audio now, sounding a lot better. Okay. Brad. I'm Brad. The couple upstairs banging. Dining room table says I'm on universal credit and PIP, which is a disability benefit, and I'm constantly scrutinised and threatened with sanctions. So the thing is moving a bit fast. From the job centre regarding my capacity to work. I also get sick notes. Oh my goodness, it's very scary what's going on, and it feels degrading, almost as if I should be guilty for claiming. And this is what the Tories have been trying to push: this idea that, you know, if you're claiming benefits, there's something wrong. You shouldn't be claiming benefits. You should be working. And you know, we have a social safety net. I remember when I was trying to seek benefits when I was in Ireland, and I felt like I was there was something wrong with me. That it wasn't the Department of Work and Pensions, but it was the Social Welfare Office. You know, I was between jobs and I needed some support, and I was being scrutinized in a way that they were convinced that I was trying to game the system or something like that, and it's very dehumanizing. And I think it's the motivation behind it, of course, is to convince people not to claim their benefits. Instead, what the DWP should be there for, it should be like citizens' advice. You go in and they tell you these are the benefits that you're entitled to, and this is what you should apply for. Are you looking for a job? Would you like to get a job? Here's some courses you can do. These ones are best suited to your skill set. What would you like to do? This is what it should be, but instead it's the opposite. It's about targets. It's about government ministers getting a headline saying we have lowered unemployment, or we have forced this number of people off benefits, or we have cut off benefits to this extent. When I first claimed disability benefit, my mum hammered a phrase into me: the law says you're entitled to it. Yes, that's what you have to go in. You have to go in knowing and confident that you deserve these things, because their job is to convince you that you're not, which is inhumane. I'm already sinking into debt, and I get only £4,009.60 a year ESA. It doesn't even cover my rent, let alone bills, child maintenance, or food. I'm so sorry to hear that, Andrew. It's like, how are people supposed to survive, especially as the cost of living is driving up everything. Inflation is driving up everything. Whenever the Tories talk about, well, inflation is coming down, what they're trying to convince people of is that, well, prices are coming down. But of course, prices are not coming down. Prices are still rising, just not as fast as they were last year, but they're continuing to rise. Billions unclaimed every year. Because they convince people, don't claim your benefits. Like, it's the complete opposite of what the DWP should be.
HD, but could you do data entry? Would you be able to do that?
With a lot of difficulty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken me. I've been working on the CV that they've assigned me for almost a month.
Because you're knackered all the time. Because you literally feel like you're swimming through cement.
Yeah, literally, it really is like that. And I've often thought this, that if it wasn't for my mum, I think I would actually be homeless. I wouldn't have enough money to live on.
And then you'd be in all sorts of bother. And the threat, now they're saying, get yourself a job or we'll take away what you do have. Leanne, sorry, I really am. But thank you as well, just for highlighting the reality of the existences that Rishi Sunak is trying to portray today. Largely unchallenged, the right-wing media love nothing more than an invitation to stick the boot into vulnerable people.
But that's what the whole goal of the right-wing media is, to convince the middle class that people who are on benefits are lazy, are not interested in working, when in reality it's the opposite. Many people want to work, and many people are already working. Many people on benefits are also working, in work benefits. This idea that people who are, there was a time when working meant you didn't have to rely on benefits because wages were high enough to cover the cost of living. Now that's of course not the case. So people have to rely on benefits. And you have the Tories who are completely disconnected from this reality. And I'm not just talking about Rishi Sunak. Yes, he's completely disconnected. But even people like Jeremy Hunt, who owns something like 10 properties. Even he owns properties that he doesn't even know about, allegedly. And he rents them out. And he lives in another world. And these people are the ones making the decisions for ordinary people who are struggling to make ends meet, who are facing a very difficult future. And we see inflation not dropping at all. Or inflation is dropping, but prices are not dropping. Okay, let's move on. A bit of news on the autumn statement from the Chancellor.
And if you've been following this in the run-up, you probably recall two things. First of all, apparently the Chancellor has lots of headroom with which to spend extra money. And secondly, he'd rather like to cut taxes. But let's just kind of look beyond that into the big numbers and see what's going on here. Because the big story here, overshadowing a lot of this, is that according to the OBR, the likely size of the economy is going to look a lot different to how it did last time around. I'm afraid it's not all that good news. It's not because everything is going gangbusters. It's basically, in large part, because of inflation and because of some statistical changes. Last time around, it was expected to go up like that. This is cash GDP, so the size of the economy was going to go up like that. This time around, it looks a lot bigger, but like I say, it's largely because of previous upgrades to previous numbers from the ONS and because inflation is a lot higher. Nonetheless, because of that, that has a bearing on something else, on the Chancellor's forecasts. Remember, he's got a lot of these fiscal rules, basically trying to keep the public finances in order, and one of them is he needs to get the national debt falling by the end of the 5-year forecast horizon. And last time it was falling, you can just about make it out there, down by £6.5 billion. What's headroom? That's headroom. When people talk about headroom, it is headroom against that rule. And because everything else has changed, those numbers, the rule will look a lot different this time as well. You will have potentially a bit more headroom, maybe £15 billion, maybe 20, £25 billion potentially. And the question is, how much of that the Chancellor wants to spend on cutting taxes? But the bigger question is, really, can he make the claim to be a tax-cutting Chancellor when...
Who gives a crap about tax-cutting Chancellor, OK? He shouldn't be cutting taxes, because what happens when you cut taxes? You cut public services, and people desperately need public services. This whole idea of cutting taxes, who benefits when the tax cuts come in? It's the richest in society, because a 1% tax cut for somebody on less than £20,000 a year has a much smaller impact than somebody who's on £100,000 a year, or £200,000 a year, or $500,000, or over $1 million. So when he talks about tax cuts, it's about for people at the higher end of the income scale. It's not about ordinary people. But remember, tax cuts are cuts to public services. No one cares about tax cuts when there's nothing to help people who have no... if you have no money, a tax cut is not going to help you. If you're struggling to pay your bills, a tax cut is not going to help you. This is just ridiculous rhetoric designed to convince middle-class Tories to come out and vote for the Conservative Party, to back up the party, because they know that after 13 years of mismanagement, people are either not going to turn up, or they're just turned off by the policies already in place.
And look at the tax burden. This is the overall tax burden as a percentage of GDP. The higher this is, the greater taxes are. All taxes, by the way, income taxes and corporate taxes and everything else. And look, under Rishi Sunak, it's forecast to get up really high. In fact, the highest level that burden has ever been since at least 1948. And
where has all this money gone? Brad, thanks so much for that super chat. Conservatives putting the N into cuts. What is that? I'm not sure where the N goes. Let's see. CNUTS. CU. Well said, Brad. Thanks for that. But this is the time when you should be borrowing money, investing in public services, because that's where people need it. As the economy starts to grind to a halt, we're talking about growth of 0.1% or even half a percentage rate. We're talking about minimal growth, like borderline recession. So that's when you need to be borrowing money, raising money to invest in public services. And they seem to be going in the opposite direction. They're talking about cutting taxes. And there's potentially a massive trap for the Labour Party, because if the Conservatives cut national insurance next year, so there's talk about reducing national insurance, that's going to decimate public services. And then when the Labour Party come in, they'll end up having to raise national insurance, and the Conservatives will be in opposition, and they will say, "Oh, look at the Labour Party, Labour government raising national insurance. We lowered it. You vote for us." And that's what they're potentially planning to do. Going on to the national living wage, this is just beyond parody. Like, you have these people who are completely disconnected from the realities of ordinary people, talking about how look at what we're doing. We're increasing the national living wage. Would we be able to live on it? Of course not. But that's for somebody else to deal with. That's not our problem. That's somebody else's problem. Andrew, thanks so much for that super chat. Now, how much of that line is due to tax havens? Yes, very good. I'll go back to this one. Yeah, how much of that is due to tax havens? Clamp down on tax havens. Can you imagine how much money could be brought back in? How much money could be made available for public services? And also, when we're talking about a whole range of things, for example, the Tories are talking about fracking. They're talking about extracting oil and gas and not creating a wealth fund like Norway did for the future, for a rainy day. Instead, it's like, extract whatever we can now and sell it on the international market, and to hell with the consequences. Anyway, back to this. Thanks so much, Andrew. Hunt says national living wage going up to £11.44 per hour next year. In his speech to the Conservative Party conference, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, said the national living wage would be going up to at least £11 per hour. This afternoon, the Treasury has announced that in the autumn statement tomorrow, it will rise to £11.44 per hour. Wow! That's going to eliminate all problems. The Chancellor will deliver a pay rise of more than £1,800 a year for a full-time worker, as he confirms that the national living wage will increase by over £1 an hour from April. The almost 10% pay boost from £10.42 to £11.44 an hour is the biggest cash increase in the national living wage in more than a decade, and fulfills the government's manifesto pledge to end low pay for those. Remember Boris Johnson's what was it? High paid economy, high wage, high employment economy, or something like that. UK wages should be £15 an hour. Like, this is going to be wiped out by inflation. Eligibility for the national living wage will be extended by reducing the age threshold to 21-year-olds for the first time. Why not 16-year-olds? 16-year-olds work. Why shouldn't they be covered by this as well? We're all going to be billionaires. Well said, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew, for that chat. Yeah, high skill, high wage. Sorry, Dan. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, this time next year, Andrew will be billionaires, just like the Trotter brothers. I'm on ESA for anxiety and depression. This is about coursing. This is causing me far more anxiety. I'm just about surviving, and it's going to kill people again. I'm so sorry to hear that, Liam. I keep saying this. It should be, the DWP should be there to help people, not to force people into jobs that they can't do just to make ends meet, just to satisfy a minister or a government official's target for the week or target for the month. Here, Max, you can marry at 16 and do the same job, but put them on the same wage. Yes. Cahill says, is Max stuck in a Portaloo? I'm sorry for the audio tonight. I'm going to see about fixing it for the next stream. We've resolved he's in Akimad's musical toilet. Okay. That's interesting. I've resolved the buffering issue, it seems, but I've introduced a new problem, audio. So you can either have buffering or you can have audio. Dave McGuinness, thanks so much for that super chat. This is an easy one for the government. Cost goes on employers and it increases the tax take for the Treasury. Yes, this is a good way of dealing with the problem. The employers pick up the cost and the Treasury benefits from it. Thanks so much, David. Make sure to check out, guys, remember to check out Indie Truck Davies, the two Davies YouTube channel. It goes on to say, eligibility for the national living wage will also be extended to the age threshold of 21-year-olds for the first time. A 21-year-old will get 12.4% increase from £10.18 this year to £11.44 next year, worth almost $2,300 a year for a full-time worker. The national minimum wage rate for younger workers will increase. 18 to 20-year-olds will get a boost of £8.60 per hour to by a £1.11 hourly pay bump. The Department for Trade, the Business and Trade estimates 2.7 million workers will directly benefit from the 2024 national living wage increase. The Treasury says that means the government has now achieved this target, lifting the national minimum living wage to 2/3 the median earnings by 2024. If Labour were to introduce this, you know what the media would say? How are you going to pay for it? I'm not criticizing. I think the wage should increase, but if of course this is, as Davey pointed out, this is for the employers to pay. It won't be the government paying it. But any new policy, the first question is how are you going to pay for it? But there's not. This is once again a policy change with the stroke of a pen. The government doesn't actually have to pay anything here. They just say, yeah, we're going to increase the minimum wage. So it's by law. Sounds a wiring problem. Can you change the cable, or is it directly into the mic? I'm using a... Let me try something. No, I'm afraid if I pull it out, it won't work again. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there, and you probably heard me say some horrible words. Maybe it's working a bit better this time. I thought the system had gone completely down, but it seems to be okay. Anyway, 200,000 plus killed by the Department of Work and Pensions. Sounds good enough to get by. Apologies, guys. I'll try and have it fixed for the sound is back. Okay, I'll try and have it fixed for the next time. Anyway, let's. We're about halfway through the stream, so I want to take a short comedy moment. We'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. Hope you'll enjoy this. I'm sure you will. Better than buffering. That's what I said. It's this or buffering. Which would you prefer?
Welcome to Broken News. A number of top British journalists say it's completely unfair to expect them to report truthfully on major political stories when they're such great mates with the people who are in power. The group of client journalists has been called as much use as a clotted cream dildo in an orgy. Our reporter has more.
A free press reporting without fear or favour. Holding our elected leaders to account is key to a functional democracy. But one group of political reporters says it's simply too much to expect them to do that when they're good pals with, married to, or being finger blasted by those in high office. One senior correspondent told Broken News, "I became a journalist because I wanted to report the unvarnished truth. But it's much harder to do that once you've quaffed Bolly with Rishi in Mayfair or attended the GQ Man of the Year Awards with Govey and done Gack in the Bogs with him." When Broken News put it to one client journalist that they were simply copying and pasting messages from a WhatsApp group without checking facts or getting a second source, they said, "Same old Labour, flip-flopping while the PM delivers on the people's priorities. Just copy and paste that, Rob and Laura. See you at Claridge's on Friday. Obviously don't paste that bit, or this bit, or that bit." The issue was brought into sharp focus during the COVID inquiry, when details emerged of scandalous behaviours at the heart of government that literally everyone knew about at the time, but some reporters didn't report on at the time because they said they couldn't possibly have known about it at the time, even though everyone was screaming at them at the time to report on it at the time. When the full sordid details were made available to the public recently, these same reporters said they were totally surprised, shocked and blindsided, which Broken News understands to be absolute bollocks. Back to you.
Daddy, thank you. Well, Broken News has just been sent an open letter to client journalists on behalf of the people of Great Britain. It says, "Do your fucking job or fuck off." What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News.
I love this. I love this. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's move on. On the issue of client journalism. So Lord Bethel, Boris Johnson is a very clever man. He's very bright. He's as bright as Cameron, Blair or Thatcher.
Very clever guy. He's just as bright as, I don't know, Cameron, Blair, Thatcher. He does, though, hide behind this sort of faux confused, could you say that again, persona when he hears news that emotionally he finds difficult to accept.
So it's the problem is the news. So if we just curated the news in a way that Boris Johnson liked to hear, then he'd be able to do his job.
So my experience of presenting evidence to him was that he was very quick on the uptake, but he didn't like bad news, and he often resisted the implications of what you were telling him.
Oh my goodness. Max needs the sound back on the mic so we can get the laugh back. Oh my god, it's like, yeah, just as long as Boris Johnson has good news, everything's okay. Absolutely insane. Anyway, let's move on. Rishi Sunak attempt to walk tall dwarfed by Lord Cameron. I want to show you that this was really funny. If it works. Looks like two dads going out, you know, for a day in the park, and they took their little son with them. Okay, no, we should make fun of Rishi Sunak's height, but you know, even Berlusconi had particular shoes that would make himself taller. Anyway, oh goodness, okay. Here was a very interesting story, and then we'll move back. We'll just talk a little bit more about the DWP. This was quite interesting. It says here, reasonable for protesters to call Ian Duncan Smith Tory scum. Court rules. This is wonderful. I'll do this later. Two protesters were reasonable in calling Ian Duncan Smith Tory scum outside the Conservative Party conference the High Court has ruled in a rejection of an attempt to overturn their acquittal. Lord Justice Popplewell and Justice Fordham said no fault in law was made by a senior district judge last November in finding Ruth Wood, 52, and Radical Haslam, 30, not guilty of using threatening, abusive and insulting words or behaviour with intent. In response to a request for a judicial review from the Director of Public Prosecutions, the High Court found that Judge Goldspring, who had also described as a Chief Magistrate, had made the important finding that the use of Tory scum was to highlight the policies of Duncan Smith, and that this was relevant to the reasonableness of the conduct in relation to the rights of freedom of expression and assembly. I love this. There was nothing to undermine Goldsmith's conclusion that criminalising the words Tory scum would be a disproportionate interference in the two protesters' rights, the High Court ruled. Tom Wainwright, a barrister at the Garden Court Chambers representing Wood and Hillslam, said the judgment represented an important defence of the right to freedom of expression. Just the idea that someone can be convicted for saying this is bizarre in the first place. The Director of Public Prosecutions was trying to put the burden on the defendants to show that they hadn't crossed the line. The crucial question of when free speech crosses the line into something that is criminal. So this is great news. So we're free to call Ian Duncan Smith Tory scum as long as it's we're criticising his policies and the policies that he supported and continues to support. So that's been finally a bit of good news in a sea of terrible news. Anyway, let's continue with some of the DWP comments. So once again about this story here, disabled people must work from home to do their duty, says UK Minister. I keep getting this notification. People with mobility and mental health problems will be asked to work from home or lose benefits as part of the UK government. Minister described today as doing their duty. When Boris Johnson, remember when Boris Johnson had resigned and he stayed in office for another few weeks? Was he working? No, he wasn't working. He was going around on. He was taking flights in with the Royal Air Force, I believe it was. He was having fun. He was not working. He was not doing his duty. Was there any criticism of Boris Johnson at that time? No, of course not. Boris Johnson was supposed to be putting in place measures to deal with the cost of living crisis, but he said, I'm not going to bother doing it because it's going to be somebody else taking over. But if somebody's on benefits, they're going to be forced into doing certain work. The policy will be set out on Wednesday as part of the autumn statement amid a drive by Rishi Sunak to make changes to the welfare system, which he described on Monday as unsustainable. Hundreds of thousands of people will be told to look for work that they can do from home or face having their benefits cut by £4,680 a year under plans that were first reported by the Times. Laura Trott, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, told Sky News, of course there should be support for people to help them into work, but ultimately there is a duty on citizens that if they're able to go out and work, they should. Those who can work and contribute should contribute. It's always about punishing people. You know, these feckless layabout, work-shy Tories don't have a problem with, you know, these are people who don't actually do any work. A lot of them, like Boris Johnson, what work has Boris Johnson done throughout his life? Not, like, work that's actually useful to society. You know, I think most people's jobs are useful to society. But people like Boris Johnson, what has he done for society apart from, you know, writing racist article. Is that work? Writing 8 racist articles in right-wing newspapers? Maybe when he was mayor of London, that was work. But then when he was doing that, he was pretty shit at it as well. Earlier, she told the Times Radio, the government plans were not just about forcing people out. She added, it's saying that we're going to put the right mechanisms around you to help you with that. But ultimately, of course, you'll have to engage with that, and there's an obligation on you as a citizen to do this. And if you don't do this, we will look at sanctions. This is disgraceful behaviour, of course, by people who do not give a flying fuck about the poor, about people who are on benefits, people who are on universal credit. They just don't care. Now, I hope that a lot of these policies will be rolled back when the Labour Party take over. Like, this is what we have to hope for, and I hope there's going to be pressure from organisations that represent people, the disabled, people on benefits, that they put pressure on an incoming Labour government to roll back these draconian measures. The DWP needs to be reformed from top to bottom. It's completely unacceptable that these types of policies are being maintained and being reinforced. David McGuinness, thanks so much for that super chat. Their duty is to pay tax too. Someone tell the rich. Yes, this is what we need. We need people like David who ask these questions. Where are the journalists? Why are they not calling the Tories out on these things? Why aren't they pushing back, saying, is it people's... Like, I would love to have asked Laura Trott that question. Is there an obligation on citizens to pay their taxes? Not to corrupt a system? Not to buy influence? Is there an obligation on citizens to do that? Is it their duty? What would she say in response? I think AI will take over by then. The rich still use roads, public service, etc. Pay away your freeloading bums. Yes, well said, Mark. Anyway, guys, moving on. What's happening with the COVID inquiry? Well,
this inquiry revealing about those tensions?
For me, the tensions get really interesting in the summer of 2020 because that's, after the first wave. And by then, we actually do know a lot more about the virus, and we know a lot more about what kind of measures would work against it, because we'd seen different countries do different things and have different outcomes. And that's where I think you're starting to see ministers not really listening to the sage advice. So, for instance, Eat Out to Help Out is an obvious example where it wasn't even run by the science, but then also the restrictions coming in September, the second lockdown, and then eventually the third lockdown in December. So that, I think, is where you're starting to see a big drift between people wanting to do politics and people wanting to control the pandemic now.
When you mix science and politics, you end up with politics. I don't remember who said that, but it was a very interesting line. And this whole idea of Eat Out to Help Out was a disaster. I remember it at the time. It's like, what the hell is going through Rishi Sunak's mind? Encouraging people to get back into restaurants, to continue to use hospitality, even though it was not safe. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. To be honest, Max, Labour will not roll them back. 0 hours comes to mind, and the others. Yes, so you had Jess Phillips saying that that Labour were going to get rid of 0 hour contracts, and then it sort of went away. Are Labour going to get rid of 0 hour contracts? Can they get rid of 0 hour contracts? We would hope that the Labour Party would look out for workers, including people who are not able to work. So people who are on benefits, who want to work, people who are reliant on benefits altogether and can't work. We would hope that Labour would look after them. The party of the social safety net, the party of the welfare state. I'm very concerned about what Keir Starmer may do and may not do. and I hope it's a case of that he's going to roll back a lot of these draconian measures and reform the DWP, make sure that people get the benefits they need, and encourage people to apply for benefits, because that's what they should be there for. You know, it's completely upside down. It's completely back to front. The idea that instead of actually encouraging people to take advantage of the system, and I mean take advantage of the system in a positive way. You know, these are the benefits. You should be applying for them. Why is it that you have to go to the Citizens Advice Bureau to know your rights? It should be the other way. The Citizens Advice Bureau shouldn't have to exist. Like charities shouldn't have to exist. But they exist because government doesn't do its job. If the DWP is not telling people, these are your rights, these are the things that you can claim benefits, these are the benefits you can claim, sorry. If it's not doing that, then what's the point of it? You can breathe to the balloon inflation factory with you, Mr. Hawking. They're aunts. Disabled people suffer enough. I know, I'm disabled. Thanks so much for that support, Mark. And I want to say thank you to everyone who came on tonight, who has been describing stories that their situation, describing what they're going through. So many people, it seems, are on universal credit or on some sort of benefits, and you know, whenever we hear about benefits, whenever it's presented in the media, I think the problem is presented in a very negative way. How many times, you know, have you heard about things like in the Sun or the Daily Mail or the Express about people on benefits gaming the system, or you know, people on benefits having like houses, you know, around the country, holiday homes, and going on holiday 3 times a year and stuff like this. This, of course, is there by design. It's there to convince people who are not on benefits that everyone who is on benefits is somehow lazy or gaming the system, taking advantage of the taxpayer. And this remains rooted in the mindset of the public. Now, I think it's something with an older generation. I think a lot of younger people don't buy into this. They're a bit more maybe switched on, and I don't mean that I'm not trying to be condescending to an older generation, but I think this type of rhetoric that's been coming down the road from the likes of the right-wing media, but also by politicians in the House of Commons, they continue. It benefits them to continue to maintain this narrative that poor people, if you're poor, you deserve to be poor. You need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You need to work harder. If you work hard, then you can achieve the things that we had. And especially for the younger generation coming in, who don't have all the benefits that the older generations had. For example, you know, access to housing or to secure employment. I think more and more of the older generation are starting to realize that actually, yeah, it's not as hunky-dory as we thought it was. You know, we actually had it a lot better than the current generation do, and many of them are understanding this through their their grandchildren. They're seeing their grandchildren struggle to find a decent job, struggle to get on the housing ladder, or even just to pay their rent. So I think the mentality is changing, but it is still quite deep-rooted. UBI, yes, the UBI would solve a lot of problems, as always. A UBI, Universal Basic Income. Let me read some more of your comments on the chat. Not a word about the £140 billion a year in tax breaks for the wealthy. Because the people who are in charge, who run the newspapers, benefit from these tax cuts, and so they're not going to talk about it. See, this is the problem. It's the likes of the Daily Mail, the Express, the Sun, the people who own those newspapers. You know, a lot of them don't have money in Britain. They don't live in Britain. They live in, you know, they have most of their cash, whatever they have, their investments are offshore. They're benefiting from tax loopholes. Some of them are living in tax havens themselves, and they're running these operations where they convince the public that, you know, their enemy is, you know, somebody who's in a dinghy or somebody who's on benefits. You know, the government need to crack down on people on benefits, crack down on asylum seekers, because they're the ones who are coming to take your job, take your money, you know, whittle away your tax revenue. You know, the government is being too soft on asylum seekers or too soft on people on benefits, and they should, you know, a hardline approach should be taken, especially when it comes to those who are struggling at the lowest end of the economic scale. That's what these newspapers are designed to do, and continually ignore talking about the real issues. You know, for example, when it comes to increasing taxes on the rich and clawing back some of that money that has gone offshore.
I think if you actually look at a lot of what the stage reports and minutes did, they set out some really clear advice along different things. Now, the government followed some of it and it didn't follow other bits. If sage scientists have been free to actually go out and communicate their minutes in full and say, right, these are the things that we've suggested. So one of them, for instance, might be paying for isolation support, which they recommended throughout, but never really happened. And then the government can say, okay, well, we're following this or we're not following it, and this is why. And I think then you do have a much clearer separation between what the science advice is and what the policy decisions are.
Isn't there another issue here as well, that the science is only part of it, and you know, you also have to listen to the arguments about mental health, economists, business leaders, and so forth. The science is only one part of what the decision makers have to take in.
Yeah, that's true, but it's not this either or. It's not a zero-sum game, right?
Exactly, and this is the problem was when it came to the pandemic. You had Boris Johnson looking over his shoulder constantly at his backbenchers who were saying, why are we going into lockdown? We need to be coming out of it. You know, we've just come out of the lockdown. Let's do a victory lap saying that we're the fastest country out of lockdown in Europe. Let's get the economy back up and running again, get people back into offices. Why? Well, because we have property portfolios that are taking a bit of a hit at the moment. That's what it's about. That's what it was about. It wasn't about protecting the public. Like, we're talking about the Conservative Party who imposed austerity that killed at least 300,000 people. Okay? Austerity was a war on the poor. So who would actually believe that Boris Johnson and people around him actually cared about protecting people? They cared more about themselves and protecting the economy, because Boris Johnson was worried about losing his seat. He was worried about rebellions. Not because he was afraid that, well, if I was taken out, somebody else worse could be put in my position. No, it's because he only cared about himself. I couldn't believe how coy Chris Whitty was being about naming names today. I haven't seen that. I need to check that out. They should face criminal charges. It will never happen. Yes, I remember saying at the time that when the inquiry is eventually concluded, people will look back and say, well, was it really worth it? Oh, believe me, this is what's going to happen. The media will convince the public as well of this. Leave Boris alone. Boris did his best. It was a difficult situation. Nobody knew what was going on. We can't blame Boris for any of this. And then he'll be somewhat, quote-unquote, vindicated, you know, within the media. He did his best. You know, it was something new. Nobody knew what to do. The scientists were putting too much pressure on him. He was thinking about the economy, and that was important as well. Let's focus on the cost of the lockdown, not the cost that would have been to society and the economy if there wasn't a lockdown. These people view the public like a turd on their fancy shoe. Yes, well said, Chris. That's what they do. It's the public are a waste of space. Stop investing in time in the public. We just need to convince them just before a general election that we care about them, that we're going to give them some extra few crumbs to live off, and hopefully that'll be enough to get us over the line. And then as soon as we're back in power, we go back to treating them like crap once again. You know, it's like the politician, you know, just before the election, promising the world, and then of course the day after the election, not giving a crap. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. I will I promised to try and fix these audio issues for the next time, but at least we didn't have any buffering problems. So that's a step in the right direction. So I want to say thank you to the moderators for doing a wonderful job tonight as well. Thanks to everyone who came on. Thanks for smashing the like button. Can you see the video of Nigel Farage facing the giant spider? Finally faces something more creepy. I haven't seen that, so I will check that out. I have to be careful what I post on the stream because there's a risk of some videos being taken down and stuff like that. But we're almost. I will check that out later. So thanks for recommending that. Nigel Farage. Why the hell was Nigel Farage put in the jungle in the first place? £1.5 million for Boris Johnson. For Nigel Farage in the jungle. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, guys, I want to say thank you once again to everyone who came on. See you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Poor spider. And enjoy this before we go.
Is on the line. Hello, Colin.
You can't
How you
even
doing?
say Merry Christmas anymore, Anthony. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
You said this last year, Colin, and the year before
it's
that.
even more true this year. Not that the police will even arrest you for it because they've gone all woke and against the silent majority. And by silent, I mean loud. And by majority, I mean the 172,000 members of the Conservative Party.
You said last year that Christmas adverts were all foreign. Is it the same this year, Colin, with all the ones you've watched?
It's worse. I don't want people having different Christmas experiences, but I don't want it forced down my throat. With technology advancing, how long is it going to be until I turn on an advert for Sainsbury's and a mixed-race couple climbs through my television screen into my living room and forces me to watch their trans sister urinate in my bathroom?
Yeah.
That one Richie Sunak met Elon Musk. What are they planning?
It's the blob, Colin. It's the blob. They've infiltrated the UK with the woke Christmas mind virus.
We know all the good people are on our side. Lee Anderson feeding the poor with 30p coins, just like Jesus did. Boris Johnson sitting women on his lap like Father Christmas. Nadine reading us all a fantasy story from her new book. And sweet, sweet Liz Truss reminding us of the decent British values of putting a stocking under the chimney. Chimneys we used to own before the mortgage rates went up and we couldn't afford our houses anymore. These are the traditions you will destroy by voting Labour. This is the last Christmas under a Tory government. If that doesn't put the fear of God up you, I don't know what will. Anyway, mate, thanks for having me on. Love to the family.
Love to the family, Colin. Love to the family. Merry Christmas.
I can't even sing carols without thinking of Vorderman. She's poisoned my mind.
Oh my goodness, Colin. So have a great week, guys. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. As always, take care. Good night.